Fall at Equestria, The Crystal's Howling Dance, by Megaskullmon. Read by Forrest M. Chapter 12. The March to Hell.
The march into hell is but a fleeting glance of death itself. Remember to smile.
It was early morning, and we started walking into the bog to get to the camp. It was pretty foggy this morning. There was a large group of rat creepers with junk reapers in junk power armor, along with dumbbells raiders that walked side by side. The leaders of the three armies stayed ahead. All of them knew what was going to happen. Walking alongside me and Sand was Fleur and her crew. Along the way, it seemed the ghouls wished to stay clear of a group this big, and none of those strange monsters came up from the ground. The fog kept us from being seen for the moment, but we had to march through hell. We were asked not to wear a mask. We wished to see the past and live it, so we know what we were fighting for. I looked towards the rat creepers. Some of them seemed to be diggers. The plan was to let them through and get a small force in to open the gates. Then, when Crossfire's troops come in along with the buffalo, we try our best to do this quick and clean. If any enclave live, we keep them alive. War is but a story to many, a battle that is not to be said, a battle that can never be ended. But sometimes battle is but a way to keep peace. To most, sadly, it's a way to show their ego, their might. A story of this battle has always come to being. Most don't understand war, but most will never see for when the mega spells hit our lands. Journal entry from Silvergunner. Introduction of the leaders.
Sewers of Manhattan is where I was born. I was known as Whiskers at the time. I was young. It was about 150 years after the war. I heard many stories from older rat creepers that had their lives extended from the magic radiation. But when Boney started searching the ruins, they saw that we have been living there. At first, they were respectful to us. Then, slowly, a few months later, they started killing us. Then, going out after our young. Being pretty young myself, I had to gather a group and lead them out of the city. During this, I lost my leg. Then, forced a stick into the former hole of the leg, not caring about the pain. But this journey is what called me Cannonball, king of the rat creepers of Reaper Fields.
Ah, yes, my old man. A stupid stallion, a racist stallion, who founded the Junk Reapers. But I am the one who helped him with much. He's too old to keep going. So again, I founded the base and the guards to protect our interest. I broke off ties with the slavers and raiders that he wished to work with. Monty Hoof was not always my name, but he named me that as an insult. He was never a kind stallion, not even to my mother. But if any change happened around him, he started to lose it and think. He had 2 fake heart attacks to gain support. He wasn't happy about this, but I told him what was at stake and told him. Lives are going to be murdered by the Enclave. Then he went silent, telling me to go take as many troops as I need. I'm going to prove to him that we need to fight this world to bring peace. Ah, yes. Raiders, slavers, so on. I guess how some look at me, well, I'm just that. But I had enough of this pointless wasteland that seemed to be. Being the second in command of this raider troop, killing the former leader, that forced us to join with Wheeltread. Wheeltread needs to be killed and hanged, but we'll see when we get there. My mother was a bitch. She named me Dumbbell because, well, just because. Since my father was never there, I just fucked her. They give her a child and then left for Manhattan, never to be seen again. So I was basically just a worthless piece of shit to her. But hey, I still loved her, and she still loved me. But she showed it in the oddest of ways. Day 34. Morning weather fog. Location, Time Bog. The fog was deep and thick, but we could still make out the past in the bog. We gave it a name, the Bog of Time. A bog that shows the past to those that don't wish to follow it. All the ponies cheered and laughed, and then fought in the name of hope. War, blood, death, and then resets to peace all over again. No matter what we do, no one had a mask, because we needed to keep them, just in case they used gas on us. But even though, a lot of us were heading to a battle. 20 rat creepers, 10 junk reapers, and 10 dumbbell raiders. Not sure the count on Crossfire's troops in the Buffalo, but besides us was the 3 leaders walking along with me and Crow in his raven form on my shoulder. Sand walked beside me. Fleur and her crew alongside us. The mindless ghouls stayed away from us because of the large crowd, but Fleur looked at them and used her magic to coax them to join us. Suddenly, we watched an entire force of the ghouls coming from the bog water. Some standing right by us, looking towards us, growling, but they followed Fleur like she was a leader. I looked towards all of those that were with us. I wasn't sure who was going to live, but we needed to get some rat creeper force in to start the battle and open the door. But this would be a 1.5-day walk to get to where we must go. I can't allow us to be stopped. The fog let up a bit above. We started to see some enclave flying into the POW camp, and then the fog rolled back in. They seemed to stay, meaning that we need to get there before too many of them take it over. I looked to the leaders.
I feel we need to do this swiftly. Let the ghouls rush in first. I will go in with the diggers, while the rest of you fight out here.
Cannon nods. Fleur nods and looks to her crew, nodding, saying softly, "For Equestria." The other crew said the same thing. As we got closer, we started to run while the ponies trot. The rat creepers got on all fours, as we no longer wished to wait to do this battle. From a 1.5-day walk, it would now take half of a day. We would get in at the night. But then, after an hour of cutting a day off the march, we went back to just a normal, calm walk. I looked to the others. It seems they came ready to camp for the night. Looking towards the bog, it was getting thicker. The time was getting more and more intense. We were now seeing time like it was years ago, even before the war. But no voices. If we could only hear them. But I saw something. I saw the princess. I followed them, leaving the line of the marching. Cannon blinked and looked to Pothead and nodded to her as he left the march as well. He followed me as I followed the 2 mares. The fog enveloped the 2 of us, but the march kept going. We would have to catch up, but something was calling me. Location: Time Bog, lair of the bog weevil. I kept following the 2 princesses. I wanted to see them. It's like I was being called to follow them. Maybe I could talk to them. I followed them closer and closer. I watched them as it seemed so amazing. But I didn't see what was about to happen to me. A large bug that seemed to be living here since the war was using the ghost to get prey. But I didn't see it. As it rose up, all I saw was the princess. As it blew the strange gas from the bog into my face, making the figment more real. I saw them, solid, and they spoke in soft words, like I was there in the past. My heart, my want to see this world, I could just touch it. Cannon saw what was about to happen to me, the giant creature blowing the mist on me, and then slowly easing up to get ready to eat me. Nature taking its course, as many would say. Cannon lifted up his machine gun leg and fired at the creature. It reared up angrily, but not enough to kill it, as he took his chance to slap me awake with a good slap in the face. I shook my head, looking at him, and then seeing the creature.
"I would say, my dear, it's best to run, of course."
I stared at the princess again, bowing to them like they were real, and then rushing off as the creature started chasing us. It seems we ended up in some cave. The cave was filled with the bones of his victims and the blood seeping everywhere, causing it to look very interesting. More started to show up, and we got trapped for the moment. As they looked at each other, they growled and hissed. It seems they didn't care much for each other. What weird creatures. Then I looked at my pitbuck. We were in magical radioactive fog that wasn't just fog. It was radiation, and the bog was full of it. It was ticking up slowly, but we couldn't stop. We had to get out. I looked around as the fog slowly lifted, since these creatures weren't causing it anymore. These creatures, they made the fog. There are more than 2 of these creatures in the bog.
Cannon, we need to get out of here. This fog is created by them and is causing my pitbuck to go nuts.
Cannon nodded, but these creatures got very angry on their sides, and there were strange sacs that released the fog. More and more of it started pouring from the sacs. As they got closer to us, their hissing was causing strange fluid to drip from their mouths, and it boiled and burned into the ground. These things didn't only cause fog, they had acid venom. I looked towards Cannon, lifting my paws up to the side, and rushed to the other side, as the creatures smashed into each other, now fighting. As we tried to find a way out of the cave, we saw more and more dead, ripped apart. I looked to Cannon, and he nodded as we kept running, and we found the way out, finally. But before we could leave, a large creature stopped in front of us. It was another one of these creatures. It roared and hissed, letting out more of the fog, and then, bam! The creature fell in pain as the 3 mares in the ranger armor called to us.
Come on, hurry!
I nodded, and Cannon did as well. As we rushed to get out with the 3 Applejack Rangers, they backed off, firing at the creature, and then the 5 of us ran away from the cave as we made our way back to the army. But I have a feeling we'll see those creatures again, sooner or later. They have our scent now, and we angered them. So now, they'll definitely be on us sooner than later. Same day, time bog. Looking to the 3 mares, I smiled.
Thank you for saving us. And sorry, Cannon, about that.
Cannon laughed and nodded.
No worries, Taria. I'd feel the same way if I could meet those 2 princesses.
I looked to the mares. They never gave us their names, but they wished to stay in their suits most of the time. I looked back to Cannon.
We need to get back, or they'll be worried.
Then, as I said that, the fog got thicker, and growling and hissing came from the cave.
Shit, let's go.
They nodded, and we started rushing towards the way we needed to. We heard the creatures behind us, but we hoped they would give up. I looked at Cannon, and he nodded to me.
Mares, run ahead of us.
I looked at my pitbuck as we ran and found a few apples and removed the pins and tossed them behind us. As the creatures screamed and hissed, more fog filled the air. Then we kept running. The army was about an hour ahead of us, so we had to keep running. I panted softly, closing my eyes, and then grabbed my hammer, smashing into a ghoul that was in the way. I looked at Cannon and the mares. We heard the growling and roaring from the creatures.
Keep going, no matter how much pain you have in your body.
The 3 mares nod as they kept rushing, even with how heavy the armor is. The creatures roared and stopped chasing after us, but I'm sure we would see them again. The fog started to clear somewhat, and then we found the army and stayed by the others as I panted, and they stopped a moment.
Camp. For now.
The armies looked at each other and nodded. Same day, 8 at night. The army made a large camp, and we all sat around a campfire. The ghouls were being used to patrol the camp. I sighed softly and rested near the fire as we watched the fog, but at the moment, it was slowly vanishing. But I felt I needed to ask.
Cannon, why is there so much fog? What's going on?
I look towards Cannon, and he chuckles.
Well, let me think. Oh, yes, in the bog here, there are some creatures that can create fog. This is a time when some of them are breeding or hunting for food. There is not just those large creatures in caves like that. There are also other creatures that roam here at night. It's why we have those around the camp."
He points to the torches around the camp.
"It's something that Kip taught me. She said to have these fires around. It'll keep the creatures at bay."
I nodded and ate the meat, sighing a bit, as the fog kept floating through the air. Howling was heard, as beyond the torches we saw wolf-like beings, causing the fog that made the ghosts show up more. But this time, it was different at night. We saw instead of battle, the zebras and ponies celebrated something called hearthswarming. They may be different and have pain in their hearts, but the zebras weren't the monsters that the ponies made them out to be. During this night, we saw them showing their families. But sadly, every war will start again. But it seems to be a calm night despite the fog. I look towards the others as I ate, and Cannon laughs.
"So, you want a story? I can tell you one, if you wish to listen to me."
I smiled and nodded.
I would love to listen to Cannon. I would love to know about you and how you became a king.
Cannon smiled and looked towards the 3 mares in ranger suits.
"Listen, ladies, it's peaceful. You can take off your helms."
The 3 looked at the group. One of them spoke.
"We will only do it when the battle is over."
Cannon nods and looks to the fire and takes a bite from the meat and looks to the others.
"Well, it started 50 years ago. I was a young rat creeper named Whiskers, living in the sewers of Manhattan. A lovely sewer, full of interesting, lovely creatures. It was dangerous, but also lovely. When I was young, we traded with the ponies up above. It was a time when it was peaceful, even for the end of the world. But gangs and nasty creatures started to move in. Then, bounty hunters started to come after us. All I remember was watching my family get murdered, and we ran into many different species of rat creepers that came together. We had no leader, but we all worked as one to get out of the city. It seems some pony above didn't like the fact that we lived below. I went with Pothead here and the others, but the few that came with me didn't live through the battle to get here. Just to leave Manhattan was a pain. But I can tell you this. I used to hate ponies because of that. Then, I went to hide in a hotel, and I found that painting of the 2 princesses. I looked at them, read up on them. Then, I realized, without them, the ponies are lost."
He ate more of the meat, looking towards me.
"We left the building, and my leg got blown off by a mine. I was kept alive through the potions we found, but they attached a splint to my leg. But they still didn't have a leader. They needed one. But it's interesting to say that at first. I refused to step up. On our way out of Manhattan, we got attacked by raiders. Most of them stayed hidden, but I knew we needed to do something. I grabbed a gun and yelled, 'For Equestria!' and charged in with many warriors, and we took out many of the raiders. But most of us lost our lives. All that we had left was 20 of our kind. We called ourselves the Pack Rats. I'm sure there are more communities of rat creepers, but we were very sure we would never find them."
Cannon patted his machine gun leg and chuckled.
"But it wasn't over yet. That made the others start considering me their leader. I found it interesting that just going into a battle did that. But of course, most creepers sound like this. Yes, yes, yes. Fine, fine, fine. Most never really had a fully mutated brain. Pothead over here kind of destroyed himself through the magic rads of this world, but she's still helpful. But yes, we left Manhattan. But we had other issues. Ponies seemed to attack us on sight outside of the city. Some would try to trade with us. But we started to become very xenophobic around ponies. We wished to go south from Manhattan, going through the paths, through many of the creatures of this land. Wounded and hungry, we found Reaper fields. We looked at the dead fields and we cleaned up what we could, but it took a while to make our city."
He sighs, nodding.
"At first, the Reaper fields were full of ghouls, mines, and even some raiders. But it took a few months to clear them out. Then, We found out the soil underground, that we could grow food, but it was food that would affect us a bit, with magic rats. But it seems we got mutated by the rats, and it didn't affect us like they'd affected ponies. But the thing is, we wanted to bring peace to this land. But it wasn't going to be easy. Some loved the fact that you could just kill for a mate, or food money. So we dug our home underground, and ignored the world around us. I met Wheeltread, and he kept his ponies from attacking us, letting us be right here. We never had an issue, but some of the time, we just had to deal with the ghouls. But other than that, it's pretty much dull.
I looked at Cannon while he told his story and finished. I'm sure it was a dull story, pretty much, looking to Monteith. He blinks and chuckles. I guess you want my story then, He shrugs, seeming to relax, and his 4 hooves rested on the ground. Well, I'll say this. My father wasn't always a fool. When I was young, my father was a trader of junk and many different items. I was just a colt then. My mother, a beautiful earth pony mare. I just don't remember how she looked. Just remembered her voice. A soft voice. She was very sick and died before I could see her. I grew up in many different camps in cities and towns, going from place to place. Then he founded the Junk Collectors, but later we turned into the Junk Reapers, because we reaped junk from the garbage lands. We heard of a place full of junk and old pre-war junk, but the thing was, it would take us a long time to get out there. Our path was through blood, because during this time, going through Manhattan to get to it was the time a lot of nasty creatures started showing up. He ate his food, thinking a moment on his story, sighing. It drove my father mad to find this place. We had guides to lead us there, but he just was a bigot, calling them stupid and dummies and making fun of how they looked. This world just drove him nuts, making every pony that helped us more and more angry. He looked to the ground and sighed a bit and looked towards the rest of us. We finally found our way to the Reaper Fields, and we set up in the old base that was there. It wasn't pleasant seeing all the dead and broken down weapons and gear. So we built onto the base, making it the compound you see. It wasn't easy, I can say that much. The ghouls took a while to even let us build. The Rat Creepers weren't very respectful at the time, either. But of course, I doubt we can blame them for what happened to them. Now the interesting thing really was the fact that we finally got everything built, and then became a trading post. But Wheeltread had other ideas for us. He hired some of our guards to take him to a lab. He found some strange crystal that when one of our ponies touched it, every part of him melted, and then he turned half wolf, half pony, and died. This crystal has a strange power to it that causes creatures to gain power, but it comes with the price of killing them. He sighs again. We made a case for him to hold the magic at bay. It's a magic container that can never be opened, so the stone could never be used again. That crystal needs to stay in this box, or whoever grabs it will either become strong or die. He told us that creatures that look like Taria will come here for it and try to claim it as their creator. He looks to Taria and smiles. It was our creator, Sand said, softly growling. It's what made us from ponies to these. But the pony gene is so far out of us now. I learned this a long time ago, and I never wish to return to our own species. My species are extremely xenophobic and think that they are created by the goddess to be protectors of Equestria. But aren't we a former pony who was turned into this? Monteith blinks and nods, sighing. I see what you mean. We then formed that compound, and then my father became more of a nut, using heart attacks to get what he wants. Well, that's all I can say. Most of it is very protected secrets. I nodded as I stabbed my meat back into the fire to get it a little more cooked. I looked to Dumbbell. He blinks, and his ponies laugh. My story? You really want my fucking story? He blinks, looking to his ponies, and they stop laughing. All right, fine. My father, a worthless stallion that slept with every mare in a raider camp. Of course, I was born a raider. He slept with a slave who was my mother. I was born because of that. He refused to even see me as his son, but as another slave. He named me Dumbbell, basically thinking it would be funny to call me that. I refused to be a slave, so when he was asleep, I murdered him in cold blood, showed his head to the leader, and demanded that I become a raider to save my mother. My mother was free, of course. She joined me, and we enjoyed the time so much, but of course, she died from stupidity. The leader joined up with Wheeltread, and I disliked him. He allowed everything under the clouds in his home. Murder, rape, and so forth. He chuckled. There is no honor in rape. I was told the real prize is peace by some of the merchants that came into the city. So I killed the leader and took over, finding the zebra camp, and tried to build it up. Thanks to you, Taria, you're the one that told all three of us, without peace, we would be dead, or still in Reaper fields not trusting each other. So we have a lot to thank for you, Taria. They all looked up to me, blinking. I was not used to all the eyes on me. I remembered I had deep fur, so they couldn't see me blush as I chuckled.
Well, thanks to this journey, I met my mate. I met many friends. I met a changeling named Crow.
The raven looked up, cawing questionably, and he changed into the changeling form. Now that I was fully able to see him, he had an oddly green body with some holes in his legs, but his wings were very normal. He had long, sharp teeth, and he sat beside us.
Well, I'm happy to be a friend of yours. My species aren't used to the idea of friends, or even used to ponies running away from us. But there are more deadly creatures out there than us.
Crow then turned back into the raven and flew up into the air. I looked around, and they all looked at me still.
I take it it's story time for me?
I sighed and closed my eyes, thinking a bit, and opened my eyes.
I was born from a moon warrior and the warrior trainer. A moon warrior having a pup is a threat to the pack. They would normally kill the pup, but the elder had a use for me. So the elders took me from my mother, made me into their bodyguard, and molded me into the honor-bound warrior. I didn't even have what you would call a puphood. I grew up fighting others in the pack to make my place. I was always bullied, smashed into the ground, always given less food. I was told I'm worthless and not important.
I looked over to the others, as they all seemed to have a sad look in their eyes.
I grew up just as a joke to the others in the pack. A month or so ago, I was treated like a threat, since my mother went off to find the crystal's Howling dance. But she went to join Wheeltread.
I blinked, looking to everyone else.
Wheeltread. Wheeltread had a hoof in all of this. He was even alive during the war. I was told by Shadow that Wheeltread is over 200 years old.
The others looked at each other.
That makes a whole lot of sense now. The fact he knows so much about pre-war tech. The fact he was able to get that prisoner of war camp. He used us,
I said with a growl. Cannon blinked, thinking a moment.
That makes so much sense now.
Cannon seemed to be thinking.
He is the one that told me about Reaper Fields.
He blinked again and looked to the others.
He had a hand in all of our lives. Not in the lives of all the ponies in the wasteland. Just some of them.
Fleur blinked and looked to them.
I don't know about this Wheeltread. I doubt I would, since I stayed away from the war.
I was given a large sum of money from some ponies and other races to become a captain of the cruise ship, to remove us from the battle. It wasn't something I was happy about, but Pinkie Pie tried hard to accuse me of working with the zebras,
the lanky ghoul mare said. She looked to the other ghouls and her crew who smiled to her, and she smiled back at them.
They are now my family. I tend to live with them on that ship, till our bodies fully die. Then, I can be with my fancy.
I smiled to Fleur, and I yawned. It was late, and running here made me tired. I knew we might need to run again. I stood up after I ate the meat and went to my tent. I got grabbed by Sand, and he smiled.
Too tired?
He asked sweetly. I rolled my eyes.
All right. After tomorrow, if we are alive, I'm all yours now. Good night.
I gave him a wink and went into my tent and laid on the ground, falling asleep. Day 35. Bog. Early morning. The camp was packed up. The fog was getting thicker. Something was up. Whatever was stirring was because of what me and Cannon did. We walked the path through the bog to get to the camp. It would take many hours to get there, but I had deep thoughts of my friends.
Kip, oh, please be alive. Silver Gunner, please be repairable. But also Shadow. I would never forgive myself if he was dead. Little Hoof, I have no idea or even sure what would happen to him.
Then my mind went to Softpaw. I barely knew her, and she risked her life for everything. If only I was better. If only I did the right thing. I needed to make sure I did the right thing, but I never knew if the right thing was the right thing. It always bothered me either way. I felt I failed them all. Maybe it's time to let go of my pain. Of the woe is me. Shit. I thought deeper into my mind, closing my eyes and thinking of everything. A path that always seemed to be very normal to me. I opened my eyes again to see the path we are walking, but I was too much to myself. Every word, every hoofbeat just went silent, and I heard nothing but my own heart and thoughts. Was I right to be this hero, this wolf? I never thought I would see this again, but the path is what I need to see to neither the path of it. But with the ending, it shall always be that. But sometimes, I will never see the ending music. My heart beat slowly, and it always made me happier to see the path. My eyes focused on the ground, but then I looked up quickly, seeing the ground is but something to endure the pain. I felt my heart race. I knew I was getting closer and closer to the place we would battle for our lives. But something else bothered me. I looked at my pitbuck, and the rad numbers were pretty high. After a few hours, we got close enough that the ghouls rushed in and gunfire started going off. As they were trying to fight off the ghouls, I smiled, and Fleur with the other army waited for the fog to subside before they fired. I went with a small group of rat creepers to start digging a hole to get the gate open. Suddenly, as if it was magic, the fog subsided and the Enclave army saw our army. They started firing, and our army started firing back. It was going to be a hell of a battle as the army of rat creepers had some fall, but Fleur and her crew got a few of the Enclave down. Not enough to kill them, of course, but enough to break a little of their defense. But not enough. Dumbbell's raider ponies kept tossing their metal apples into them to try to keep them at bay. The rat creepers were the ones losing many of their lines. Cannonball stood his ground, along with Pothead, the female rat creeper who seemed to fight with a determination. Monty Hoof and the junk reapers fired their junk at the Enclave, but it didn't dent them. It wasn't pretty, but the 3 Applejack Ranger mares fired at the Enclave, taking out a few of the defenders. It seemed that even though they didn't have many guarding the place, they were pretty strong. Sand got behind a rock and put his sniper rifle on the rock and started firing at the flying Enclave soldiers. The creepers, after digging, finally made it through. I went first with the others and we started firing at the troops that were trying to block the way to the gate. But we pushed them back into the cavern that led to the city. I felt the rush. As I helped the rat creepers open the gate, we let the others in, and I started to speak.
Take those that are alive as prisoner. Don't let any of them escape.
I went to the burnt body, but I was still able to see her face. Softpaw. But I ignored it, and watched everyone do what they needed to do. Crow landed on my shoulder.
The buffalo should be there now. They will be smashing through the rocks to get through, but that will take time. Crossfire should be here soon, but I was trying to get inside to look, but
I couldn't find anything. It's dead silent in there. I think they're waiting for us, but..." He went silent at a sound of robotics. We all picked up our weapons and aimed at the cave opening as we saw a large robotic pony walk out.
Silver?
Silver looked at us with his eyes glowing, and then the weapons opened up and we looked at each other. Then Silver Gunner started firing at us. We all tried to hide as the large robotic pony was attacking us. I felt my heart shatter. They reprogrammed him. They did it. They really did it. The most peaceful robotic creature I've ever met. They updated his body a bit, giving him heavier armor as it was rusted, and a new-looking mouth that looks like a grill as he stared around him looking for a target. His voice spoke. "Come out, little soldiers, for the Enclave, for the real saviors of this wasteland." I stood up and he aimed at me.
Silver Gunner, please, it's me. I need you to listen.
The large robotic creature just started his weapon firing up and chuckled. "Silver Gunner, who is Silver Gunner? I am what my creator wanted me to be. I am Metal Rocket. Yes, it's a bad name, but that's what he wanted to call me. Now, die." He aimed and fired. The entire world froze as I felt that this would be my end, for my best friend fired at me. Was this the place of my death? I don't really know. I closed my eyes and my world went black.